how to do digital ministry. That's what this show is all about, and that's what we're talking about on this episode, along with the news of digital ministry and some of your questions. I'm Reverend Jim Keat, digital minister at the Riverside Church and director of online innovation at Convergence, host of How to Do Digital Ministry, a weekly show. That's right, it's coming back. I hope. I've got plans. Sometimes it's just going to be me, like today. Other times I will have a guest with me, like next week. Stay tuned for that one. And today we're going to talk specifically about what is this show and why am I doing it? I have 3 specific reasons to tell you. Number 1, that was my attempt at muscles. Muscles versus Bandaids. Now, it's easy for us to revert back to the things we're most familiar with, the way we've done things. There's a spider right there in my office. You can't see it because it's attached to my teleprompter and my overhead GoPro mount, which, yes, that's a bit much for an office camera setup, but hi, friend. Are we going to be friends? Okay, we're going to let him stay there. Muscles versus Bandaids. Where was I? It's easy to go back to the way we're used to doing things, the way we've always done things, just what's familiar. It's probably just, our instinct as humans. Trying something new takes intentional work and risk, and most people avoid risk. Now, during the peak of the pandemic, we were all pushed into these digital waters and forced to swim because it was the only option many of us had. But it wasn't a Band-Aid. It's easy to think we just did that for a moment, slapped it on. Now we can take it off because we're all better and back to normal, right? Normal as in the way things used to be. Normal has changed. The culture has changed and the church has changed. You've changed. These past years of digital ministry that we've all been swimming in have not been a Band-Aid to just get by. These have been new muscles that you have been cultivating and stretching, and we need to keep working them out. Insert, I'm going to pump you up clip right here.
We want to pump you up.
So this show exists to help you along the way. Consider these your weekly workout videos so that you can keep on with the work we are called to do in the world as it is and as it continues to become. Which brings me to my second point. The church needs to be where we are, not where we've been. We can learn from the past. Hold on, do I have it here? Yeah. Rearview mirrors are great, but if you spend your whole time staring at this thing, you're probably going to crash the car. Your windshield is bigger than the rearview mirror for a reason, because you need to spend your time looking forward, moving ahead, not just looking behind you. Looking back helps. Sure is important to know where you've been. To know where you're going, you have to know where you've been. But we can't just try to live back there, make the church some fictitious greatness of our past. We need to be great where we are and greater where we're going. And the world around us is in these online spaces. I mean, people have these devices and they spend time doing this. And are we going to show up in the spaces where they are? We're used to the option to Zoom in, video call in as a way to just stay connected with our community and the people around us. And are we making our churches a part of that move that we're all into now? Now you might say, we just need to get back to the building and have real community. Now, not to say that one is better than the other. It's just different types of community. And let's be honest, being in the building, people can still feel isolated and alone, especially those who aren't able to get to the building. Then they feel even more isolated. So we need to be where we are, where we're going, not just where we've been. We'll learn from the past. We will continue to live out the echoes of that legacy, but we will take new steps forward, blown by this, mysterious wind of God, wherever she might be taking us. So that's why I'm doing this, because I want the church to be where we are and where we're going and not just where we've been. And then third, the reason I'm going to do this week after week after week is because we're all still figuring this out. There's a few resources that exist. There's been some great books on digital ministry in the past few years. Some even before the pandemic. Digital Cathedral by Keith Anderson is a classic now. Did you ever think it'd be a classic, Keith? But there's so many great resources. Jason Moore has a book called Both And. Dave Adamson has a book called Metachurch. Ryan Panzer has, I think, a couple books on digital ministry out now. Great stuff. Brandon Robertson has a collection of essays he assembled. There's some really, really good resources. But for the most part, we're just all figuring this out. We're throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. And so I want to invite us all to just splash around together and see where we might end up. That was mixed metaphors of cooking and swimming. You okay with that? So there you have it. That's why I want this resource to exist, and I want to make it available to you to help you. And if that's at all helpful to you, you're in the right place. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave a comment. Let the YouTube robots know this is the kind of stuff that needs to exist. But we're going to keep going because next up, we got the news. Okay, each week we're going to bring you some things from the news and how it interacts with the world of digital ministry. This might be current events in the world and how digital ministry intersects, or it might be just stuff from the world of tech and media and ministry and how those intersections are an invitation to us as well. So for today, I'm intrigued by, when did this happen? A couple weeks ago, so end of June, I think, this date right here. There was this question asked. Can a chatbot preach a good sermon? There was a church service generated by ChatGPT. This was in St. Paul's Church in the Bavarian town of Fürth. My German is a little rusty. A guy named Jonas Simmerlein, a theologian and philosopher from the University of Vienna, he put together an entire church service that was, he says, 95% generated by ChatGPT. And then it was led by these virtual avatars. He put a few prompts in and he asked it for, the basic structure, include this, include that. And then boop, there it goes. And he dropped it into all the systems and they did a thing, which I think is just fascinating, fun. It got mixed reactions. Some people were like, it doesn't have any, heart, soul, personality in it. It was a little bit, broadcasty because everything was pre-packaged and then these digital avatars just said it all versus the space for interaction and engagement, which is a whole thing. How do you do that? Pre-recorded, live, all that stuff anyway. But I think the experiment is worthwhile to just ask, how do these emerging technologies intersect with the work of the church? So go check it out. You can find out more by Googling, can a chatbot preach a good sermon? I'll have a link to a couple articles in the description. And there's another video I made about ChatGPT and ministry that you can click here, I think. Click here. Or is it here? I think it's here. Click there and you can watch that video. But yeah, interesting stuff in the news. ChatGPT, can it not just preach a sermon, can it write the whole service? Okay, that's it for the news. Well, that's not it. That's all I've got for you today. Now, on to questions. All right, every week I want to have questions from you that we respond to directly. Like I said, today it's just me, other times me and a guest. And you can send these to me. Go to howtododigitalministry.com to fill out a form, and all the questions will come to my world, and then they'll come onto this show. So we have a few questions to start with today. First, from Jennifer, she asks, what platform should we live stream our online worship service? Zoom, YouTube, Facebook? Oh, this is a great question. And one that we asked a whole lot during the peak pandemic times. Now we're still in kind of, mid-late stage pandemic. I don't know what you'd call this. It's the forgotten about pandemic times. But I think it's still important to ask these questions. Where should we live stream our online worship service? Zoom and YouTube and Facebook are probably the most prominent, and they function very differently. Zoom is a certain thing, and then YouTube and Facebook kind of exist in another category. And so really the first question to ask is, what type of engagement are you wanting from your online congregants? Zoom allows boop, 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 all the little squares of faces who can talk together, and you can have a big Zoom meeting where you're having kind of a live church experience. However, it's a little, odd, awkward. That's my, projection onto it, to just be on a Zoom call watching a live stream, seeing everyone's faces. Yes, when you're in a church service, you're sitting there together, but it's a different, it's just a different, the packaging, the psychology, that's a whole different thing. And you're not looking at my face when we're in a building. Anyway, I think Zoom is best if you are intentionally utilizing the engagement of the people on Zoom. If it's just, we all sit on Zoom and watch a thing and occasionally say, thanks be to God, that feels like you're underutilizing the potential of the platform. You're just using it as a container. But there's good in that. There is the ability for people to have those connections and that face-to-face interaction. What I might recommend would be maybe you have like a pre-service Zoom space called like the Narthex, if you want to be architectural to the church world. People can come to the Narthex and they can, like on Zoom, little Zoom room, and they can chat with one another, and then they go to their pew, their seat, and they watch it on YouTube or Facebook, wherever it's being broadcast. And then maybe a virtual coffee hour back on Zoom afterwards. We do the second half of that at Riverside. We have virtual coffee hour on Zoom. Maybe we should do the Narthex. That could be fun. But one thing we've also started doing, I'll talk more about this in another video later, on our communion Sundays, first Sunday of the month, when the congregants in the room are invited forward to receive communion, we open up a Zoom space where we can have communion on Zoom. And we have the link on screen and a QR code, and it just takes you to the page where you can join the Zoom space. And then everyone brings whatever elements they have. And I'm typically there hosting this space as one of our clergy, and we share communion together on Zoom. It just takes 5 minutes or less, but it's consistently one of the most meaningful experiences for our congregants who are worshiping online. So that's a way of integrating Zoom as a component of the experience, but it's not quite the destination that it's being live streamed to. At Riverside, we live stream just to YouTube. We used to do YouTube and Facebook, a multi-stream strategy to get it in many places. Early pandemic, there was some glitches with Facebook live streaming that we decided to just jump ship on, and we wanted to really focus everyone into the same digital cathedral, the same online space. So there's one online chat where everyone's participating and everyone's seeing and responding if they so choose. And you could go Facebook. Facebook might be where you have more people from your space already, but I find that YouTube allows for the potential, long tail reach, where that worship service will now be posted to the second most used search engine in the world, YouTube, right behind Google, both owned by Alphabet, the same mothership company. So really be where your people are, or have an intentional strategy for why you're putting it in a single space. But I think between YouTube and Facebook, they're both good. Just what's your strategy? What's the intention? Who's there to greet and welcome people in the chat space? I might argue against the multi-stream, just because then you're saying, which door do you want to go through? Which room do you want to be in? And it's like, you're not letting everyone be in the same space. Anyway, that's my answer to that question. Question number 2 comes from Bethany. What is your go-to technology for digital ministry? Oh, there's so many toys. I mean, there's things like this, things like this. There's things like this. I have a drone somewhere up there. I have an Oculus Rift somewhere on that shelf. There's lots of things. I really think it still, for me, is the thing in my pocket. This piece right here lets me do, if I didn't have anything else and all I had was this, a cell phone, I could probably do 95% of what I do. It might require a different workflow. Editing videos is a little different on a phone. Production process, all that. But I feel like I use this for so much anyway, and I could shift a lot of the other stuff over to this if I needed to. So I think a cell phone that you're familiar with and comfortable with navigating various apps is a good way to go, because you can host Zoom calls, you can, set up shareable documents, you can manage anything you need, all the social medias, get on TikTok and Threads. Are you on Threads yet? All that from here. So I'd say this. And I also think that, you might think, well, but this camera's so much better. Yeah, the best camera is always the one that you have access to and you know how to use. So if you have this camera available to you, but you don't know how to use it, it's kind of worthless. But this one is probably with you all the time. So you can make things, engage with things, respond to things. And besides, digital ministry is not just about making stuff. It's not just about the content you make. It's about the community and the engagement and the ways that the content is a campfire that people gather around to spark conversation and connection. And, you need the ability to go, boop, 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 boop. Let me text you back, or let me jump on a call with you. And this thing can't really do phone calls. So, Bethany, cell phone is still my go-to technology for digital ministry. We could really nuance that and talk what aspects, what platforms, apps, blah, blah, blah. Save that for another video. Or if you got that question, howtododigitalministry.com, and I'll answer it. All right, one more. One more question. Christina asks, how do you create a podcast from a sermon posted to YouTube or Facebook? Oh, this is good. A couple of ways. Facebook, I don't think is really into the podcasting game yet. Wouldn't surprise me if they got there. YouTube, however, recently-ish allows you to set a playlist to be a podcast. It's still a video, all the same stuff, but it does a couple of things. It means that audio will show up in YouTube Music, so it can be featured as a podcast in YouTube Music. It gives you a little, more robust view of the stats and analytics for that particular playlist, because now it's a podcast, and all you're doing is uploading your sermon. So I'd say sermon video. If you stream all of worship, you want to have someone edit it to be just the sermon and upload the sermon as a standalone video on YouTube. Have a playlist called sermons, whatever, be creative, I don't know, and then turn it on as a podcast. Now, that doesn't put it in all the podcast places. It's not going to be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all those things through that avenue, but it's an easy way to have it be available through a way that YouTube is podcasting. So that's step one. To get it in all those other podcast places, you need to pull out the audio from that video file. This is a little more complicated. A couple ways to do this. You probably using something on your computer. If you have a PC, Audacity is a great free program. It's also on Mac. But if you have a Mac, you also have GarageBand, which is a great free program. And you can drop in the video file of the sermon and just export the audio. So you want an MP3 file. And then you need to upload that audio file to a podcast host, some sort of hosting platform for your podcast, the audio specific side. At Riverside, we use a platform called Spreaker. It has a little bit of cost to it, not too much, but it has a lot of good features. Lets us set up multiple podcasts within a single kind of overarching network that we kind of create of our own. If you want completely free, Anchor.fm is owned by Spotify, and they're a good route where you could upload your audio super easy. I've always thought that Anchor is the easiest way to podcast, and that's probably still true. And that's completely free. Let you set up a podcast feed easy through any of these hosting routes to get it connected to all the major podcast aggregators, the places where people listen to podcasts. So the one feed then goes into, it's picked up by Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, Stitcher, Spreaker, all the things that people use to listen to podcasts. So then you can say, listen to it wherever you listen to podcasts. But that's the process. YouTube is semi-easy because they're kind of building in podcast as a function to their playlists, but that's not going to put it in every place just yet. I'd love it if they did that. You have to then extract the audio, need an MP3 file, Audacity, GarageBand, easy to do that, and then upload that to either Anchor.fm, Spreaker, or 1,000 other podcast hosts that you might use. The other thing to think about too is just because you've uploaded podcast audio, there isn't really much of a built-in organic discovery process in podcasts. YouTube's a little better at this because YouTube is a search engine. People are searching for your content based on how you title it and description and all that stuff. Search engine optimization is what SEO stands for. So you might get some organic traffic there. Organic meaning people just stumble upon it because of the platform. But when you upload it in kind of these audio specific spaces, you then really need to do a lot to direct people to it. So you need to use the platforms and the channels you already have, the social media you're already on, your church email, newsletter, let your congregation know you can subscribe to our podcast, blah, blah, blah. You can get some organic reach if you get enough momentum. Like if a bunch of people on Apple Podcasts listen and give you reviews and say they love it, Apple might say, hey, this is an up and coming star podcast. Then they'll promote it a bit more internally. The same on all the platforms like that. But that can be tricky. It's possible, but it doesn't just happen. So you got to plan on doing some work to let people know it exists. Making the thing is half the process, and then you got to let people know that it's available. But that's a bit of a, hopefully covers all the questions in that question from Christina. Okay. Others, questions, how to do digitalministry.com. There's a form you can fill out, share your questions. You can fill it out 1,000 times if you have 1,000 questions. And I'll include them in an upcoming video. And we'll be back every week-ish. to talk about all this stuff. All right. I'll talk to you then. Bye.